Attila the Hun is one of the most feared names in human history. To the Roman world, he was known as the Scourge of God, a living nightmare sent to punish civilization itself. To his enemies, he was a barbarian warlord who brought destruction wherever he rode. Yet behind the legend and terror stood a complex leader who commanded one of the most powerful military confederations of late antiquity. Attila did not rise from a vacuum. His story begins with the Huns, a nomadic people who appeared suddenly on the edges of Europe in the late 4th century. Their origins remain debated, but most historians trace them back to the Eurasian steppe, possibly connected to earlier nomadic groups from Central Asia. They were masters of horseback warfare, moving swiftly across vast distances, living in portable camps, and striking with deadly efficiency. Unlike the settled civilizations of Rome and Persia, the Huns had no cities, no written laws, and no monumental architecture. Their power lay in mobility, discipline, and fear. When they entered Europe, they disrupted the balance of the entire continent, triggering migrations that would help bring down the Western Roman Empire. Attila was born around 406 AD into the ruling elite of the Hunnic Confederation. His uncle, Rugila, was king of the Huns and maintained diplomatic relations with the Roman Empire. From an early age, Attila was exposed to Roman politics, warfare, and diplomacy. He understood Roman weaknesses better than most Roman generals themselves. After Rugila's death in 434 AD, Attila and his brother Bleda inherited leadership jointly. This dual kingship was unusual but temporary. Together, they negotiated treaties with the Eastern Roman Empire, extracting enormous tributes in gold. Rome paid not for peace, but for survival. The Treaty of Margus forced the Eastern Roman Empire to hand over large sums of gold annually. When Rome failed to meet its obligations, Attila responded with violence. His armies crossed the Danube, devastating Roman provinces in the Balkans. Cities were burned, populations slaughtered or enslaved, and Roman defenses shattered. The Hunnic army was unlike anything Rome had faced before. Hunnic warriors were expert horse archers capable of firing accurately at full gallop. Their composite bows had greater range and power than Roman weapons. They avoided direct confrontation, instead using hit-and-run tactics that exhausted and demoralized enemy forces. By 445 AD, Attila eliminated his brother, Bleda, and became sole ruler of the Huns. From that moment on, his ambition expanded dramatically. He was no longer content with tribute. He wanted domination. Attila reorganized the Hunnic Confederation into a centralized power. He ruled over a vast territory, stretching from the steppes of Central Asia to the heart of Europe. Germanic tribes such as the Ostrogoths, Gepids, and Alans were either conquered or forced into alliance. These subject peoples supplied soldiers, intelligence, and logistical support. Contrary to Roman propaganda, Attila was not a chaotic savage. Contemporary accounts describe him as disciplined, restrained, and highly intelligent. He lived simply, dressed modestly, and avoided excessive luxury. While his followers indulged in gold and silver, Attila drank from wooden cups and sat on plain furniture. This image strengthened his authority and reinforced the idea that he ruled by strength, not decadence. Attila understood psychological warfare. He cultivated fear as a weapon. Stories of his cruelty spread faster than his armies, causing cities to surrender without resistance. Roman writers exaggerated his brutality, but fear itself became one of his greatest strategic advantages. In the Eastern Roman Empire, Attila was unstoppable. He destroyed cities such as Nisus and threatened Constantinople itself. Only massive tribute payments and desperate diplomacy prevented a direct assault on Thay, Eastern capital. The Western Roman Empire, however, presented a different challenge. By the mid-5th century, the Western Empire was already collapsing. Its economy was broken, its armies understaffed, and its authority fragmented. Attila saw opportunity. In 450 AD, a strange event gave Attila a pretext to invade the West. Honoria, sister of Western Roman Emperor Valentinian III, sent Attila a ring and a plea for help, seeking escape from an unwanted marriage. Attila interpreted this as a marriage proposal and demanded half of the Western Roman Empire as her dowry. Rome refused. Attila responded as he always did, with war. In 451 AD, Attila led one of the largest invasions in European history, crossing the Rhine into Gaul, modern France. His army was a massive coalition of Huns and subject tribes, sweeping across Roman territory, destroying cities and leaving devastation behind. Cities such as Metz and Reims were burned. Refugees fled in terror. The Roman world braced for annihilation. Yet for the first time, Attila faced a unified resistance. Roman general Flavius Aetius, one of the last great commanders of Rome, forged an alliance with former enemies, including the Visigoths under King Theodoric I. This coalition met Attila at the Catalaunian Plains, one of the most important battles in European history. The Battle of the Catalaunian Plains was brutal and inconclusive. Tens of thousands died. Attila's advance was stopped, but not decisively defeated. Though he withdrew, his power remained intact. The following year, Attila invaded Italy itself. Northern cities fell rapidly. Aquileia was destroyed so completely that survivors later struggled to locate its ruins. Panic spread across the Italian peninsula. Rome seemed doomed. According to legend, Pope Leo I met Attila near the Po River and persuaded him to turn back. While later Christian tradition emphasized divine intervention, historians suggest practical reasons. Disease, famine, stretched supply lines, and the threat of Eastern Roman forces attacking Hunnic lands forced Attila to retreat. Attila returned to his heartland undefeated. In 453 AD, at the height of his power, Attila died suddenly on his wedding night. Accounts suggest he suffered a massive nosebleed or internal hemorrhage after heavy drinking. The man who had terrified empires died without a battle. His death was followed by chaos. Without Attila's authority, the Hunnic Confederation collapsed rapidly. Subject peoples rebelled. Within a few years, the Huns vanished from history as a political force. Yet Attila's impact was permanent. He reshaped Europe. His invasions weakened Rome beyond recovery. He accelerated the fall of the Western Roman Empire and helped usher in the medieval world. His name became synonymous with destruction, power, and fear. But Attila was more than a destroyer. He was a product of his time, a master strategist who exploited the weaknesses of decaying empires. He understood power, fear, and diplomacy in equal measure. History remembers him not because he built cities or laws, but because he changed the course of civilization. And in that sense, Attila the Hun was one of the most influential figures the ancient world ever produced. By the mid-5th century, Attila the Hun had transformed from a regional steppe warlord into the most feared man in the known world. His name alone was enough to empty villages, halt trade routes, and send diplomats rushing across Europe with gifts and desperate promises. Roman historians would later call him the Scourge of God, believing he was a divine punishment sent to chastise a decaying civilization. But behind the legend was a calculating strategist who understood power, fear, and politics better than most emperors of his age. Attila did not rule through chaos. He ruled through structure. The Hunnic Empire under Attila was not a random horde, but a flexible confederation of tribes, bound together by loyalty, fear, and the promise of plunder. Goths, Gepids, Alans, and other Germanic and steppe peoples fought under his banner. Each group retained its leaders, but ultimate authority rested with Attila alone. He understood something Rome had begun to forget. An empire survives not just through walls and laws, but through decisive action. After years of extracting massive tribute from the Eastern Roman Empire, Attila turned his attention westward. The Western Roman Empire was weaker, politically fractured, and militarily exhausted. Its emperors ruled in name, while real power rested with generals, bureaucrats, and regional elites who often worked against one another. Attila saw opportunity. The spark for his western campaign came in an unexpected form. A letter from Honoria, the sister of Western Romain, Emperor Valentinian III, trapped in a forced engagement and seeking escape. Honoria secretly sent Attila a message along with her ring, asking for help. Attila interpreted or pretended to interpret the message as a marriage proposal. His response was bold and deliberate. He accepted the proposal and demanded half of the Western Roman Empire as Honoria's dowry. Rome refused. For Attila, refusal was justification. In 451 CE, Attila led one of the largest invasion forces Europe had ever seen across the Rhine River into Gaul. Cities fell in rapid succession. Metz was destroyed. Reims burned. Entire regions were depopulated. Refugees fled south and west, spreading panic ahead of the Hunnic advance. But this time, Rome would not stand alone. A remarkable coalition formed against Attila, led by the Roman general Flavius Aetius. Aetius was one of the few men who truly understood the Huns. In his youth, he had lived among them as a hostage and ally. He knew their tactics, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Aetius gathered an alliance of Roman forces and former enemies, Visigoths, Franks, Burgundians, and Alans. It was a desperate gamble uniting peoples who had fought Rome for generations, but it was the only chance to stop Attila. The two forces met at the Catalaunian Plains, near modern-day Chalon-sur-Marne in France. What followed was one of the bloodiest battles of late antiquity. The Battle of the Catalaunian Plains was not a clean or orderly clash. It was brutal, chaotic, and devastating. Tens of thousands died. The ground was said to be soaked with blood. Attila himself barely escaped defeat, retreating behind a defensive ring of wagons as night fell. Though the battle ended without a clear tactical victory, strategically it was a turning point. Attila had been stopped. For the first time, the Huns were forced to retreat. But Attila was not finished. The following year, in 452 CE, he invaded Italy itself. Northern cities fell one by one. Aquileia was destroyed so completely that it was said no one could find its ruins afterward. Milan and Verona were taken. Rome itself seemed doomed. Yet the city was spared. According to tradition, a delegation led by Pope Leo met Attila near the Po River. What was said between them remains unknown. Some claimed Attila saw a vision of divine punishment. Others argue that disease, famine, and overstretched supply lines forced his decision. Whatever the reason, Attila withdrew. It would be his final campaign. In 453 CE, at the height of his power, Attila died suddenly on his wedding night. The official account claims he suffered a massive nosebleed and choked to death while intoxicated. Other theories suggest assassination, poisoning, or internal hemorrhage. The truth remains uncertain. What is certain is what happened next. Without Attila's iron will, the Hunnic Empire collapsed almost immediately. His sons fought one another. Subject tribes rebelled. Former allies turned into enemies. Within a generation, the Huns vanished from history as a political force. Rome, however, did not recover. The damage Attila inflicted accelerated processes already underway. Cities never fully rebuilt. Economies remained shattered. The Western Roman Empire fell just 2 decades later in 476 CE. Attila did not destroy Rome alone, but he ensured it would never rise again. His legacy is deeply divided. In Roman sources, Attila is depicted as a barbarian monster, a destroyer of civilization. In Germanic and Scandinavian legends, he appears as a powerful king and tragic hero. In Hungarian tradition, he is remembered as an ancestral figure, a founding father of nations. Modern historians view him more cautiously. Attila was not a mindless savage. He was a product of his time, a master of psychological warfare, a shrewd diplomat, and a ruler who understood that fear could be more powerful than conquest. He forced Rome to confront its own weakness, and in doing so, he changed the course of European history. Empires do not always fall to enemies stronger than themselves. Sometimes they fall because someone like Attila appears at the exact moment when they are no longer strong enough to resist. That is why, more than 1,500 years later, his name is still remembered. Not as a king of cities, but as a king of fear